It was October 1995, a quiet fall evening in a sleepy South Carolina town when everything changed for the Collins family. They had no idea that their ordinary lives would soon be interrupted by one of the most elaborately planned bank robberies the town had ever seen. What started as a typical evening took a terrifying turn when masked men burst into their home, taking them hostage. The robbers' plan was ruthless: intimidate, threaten, and force the Collins family to cooperate in the robbery at the local bank, a short drive away. The robbers knew exactly who to target. The Collins family's small-town wealth had made them an easy target for an elaborate scheme. But it wasn't just a mere robbery. It was a meticulously planned heist designed to go unnoticed, with the family serving as pawns in a much larger game. With the family captive, the robbers drove them to the bank, leaving a trail of uncertainty and fear. Little did they know that the two men who led this operation would be identified by the police in a matter of hours. But the mastermind, the one who orchestrated it all, he had left no trace behind. No fingerprints, no identification, and no motive. Subscribe to stay updated on this mind-bending true crime mystery. Let's dive into the investigation. As the weeks passed, the investigation into the robbery grew more intense. The authorities were quick to apprehend the two criminals caught in the aftermath of the heist. The pair was soon arrested, and their stories confirmed what the police suspected. They were only the foot soldiers in a much larger plan. But the real question remained: who was the mastermind pulling the strings? Investigators learned quickly that the mastermind, known only by the code name the Director, had covered his tracks perfectly. He was not a shadowy figure. They didn't even know if he was a man or a woman, but rather a calculating criminal who had been planning this robbery for years. As they delved deeper into the lives of the perpetrators, they uncovered strange connections to the Collins family, seemingly insignificant details that pointed towards someone with intimate knowledge of their lives. But every lead that seemed promising only led to dead ends. The more they dug, the less clear the case became. Surveillance footage showed that the Director was an expert at evading capture, never appearing in the same place twice and leaving no trace behind. It was clear this was no ordinary robbery. It was a piece of a much larger puzzle, one that the police couldn't seem to solve. Then, just as it seemed like the investigation was heading nowhere, something shocking happened. A letter was discovered hidden in the basement of the Collins family estate. It was old, yellowed with time, and written in a code. The police had to work tirelessly to crack it, and when they finally did, they were stunned by what it revealed. The code didn't just reference the robbery. It spoke of a larger conspiracy, one that involved people in high places. At first, the authorities thought the letter was a misdirection, an attempt to lead them astray. But as they deciphered more messages, a chilling picture began to emerge. This wasn't just a robbery. It was part of a carefully orchestrated scheme to seize control of the family fortune. The Collins family was just one piece of a much larger plan, and the Director had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. The investigation took on a new direction, with police focusing on the possibility that someone within the Collins family itself might be involved. Could the mastermind have been someone who had close ties to the family? Perhaps an insider who had been laying the groundwork for years? The more they learned about the people involved in the heist, the more they realized how intricate and deep the conspiracy went. Every lead seemed to open up a new mystery, and the deeper the police went, the more they realized how many people were involved. It wasn't just a group of thieves. It was a network of criminals who were connected in ways no one could have predicted. They were all linked to the Director, a figure who seemed to operate from the shadows, never revealing their true identity. Just when it seemed like the case was going to be lost to time, a new lead emerged. One of the robbers, a man who had been arrested early on in the investigation, suddenly disappeared from his cell. It was a puzzling development. How had he escaped? Was he helped by someone on the inside? Or was there a larger plan at play? The investigation shifted gears, and the police began to look into the idea that the Director had set up a network to help the criminals escape justice. But the true shock came when the investigation uncovered a hidden safe deposit box. Inside the box was a list of names of people who had been involved in the heist, but also names of high-profile individuals with political connections. The Director wasn't just a criminal mastermind. They were part of something far bigger, something that could threaten the foundations of the community itself, in a twist that no one saw coming. The investigation revealed the unthinkable. The Director was not some outsider, but a close member of the Collins family. The entire robbery had been a power grab, a way for someone within the family to seize control of their fortune. The mastermind had carefully orchestrated the heist, using the family's own wealth and resources to pull it off without anyone suspecting a thing. With the pieces finally in place, the authorities uncovered the final truth. The robbery was not about money. It was about control, power, and manipulation. The mastermind had been operating within the family for years, hiding in plain sight, manipulating events and people for their own gain. The robbery was just the final step in a long and carefully crafted plan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on more true crime investigations like this one. Let us know your theories about the mastermind and what might have motivated them to orchestrate such a devastating crime. Did they act alone, or were there more people involved? Comment below with your thoughts. As the dust settled and the authorities finally pieced together the full extent of the director's plan, the community was left reeling. They had uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The story of the Collins family and the shocking mastermind who had manipulated them all would go down in history as one of the most twisted and unexpected true crime tales ever told. The investigation had stalled. For months, the case seemed to go nowhere. Despite all the evidence, the arrests, the cryptic letters, and the scattered clues, the director remained an enigma. Law enforcement had followed every lead, but each time they got close, the mastermind slipped further into the shadows. It felt as if the more they uncovered, the more questions arose. Subscribe now and join the journey to uncover the truth behind the mastermind's escape. Stay tuned for shocking twists and secrets that have remained hidden for decades. As the months turned to years, the case grew colder. The initial excitement and the rush to solve the robbery began to fade. But for one detective, the case was far from over. Detective Sarah Mitchell had taken the lead after the original team's exhaustion. She refused to let go, believing that the director was still out there, somewhere, pulling the strings of a much larger operation. Sarah's determination led her down a path that would uncover something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. She dug deeper into the finances of the Collins family, their business dealings, and their obscure ties to mysterious investors, names that never appeared in any official records, but whose influence could be felt across the city. Sarah learned that a major portion of the family's wealth had been tied up in offshore accounts, and there were hints that some of those accounts had connections to an international crime syndicate. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that the Collins family was merely one small part of a vast, secretive network of criminal activity. The robbery had been a front for something much bigger, something that reached far beyond the confines of a small-town bank. Sarah spent weeks tracking down financial records, cross-referencing names, and following leads across multiple countries. What she uncovered was chilling. The director wasn't working alone. They had a vast network of criminals, political figures, and business magnates working in the shadows. This wasn't just about stealing money. It was about controlling power. The people behind the director were masters of manipulation, able to orchestrate global-scale heists and influence political systems from behind the scenes. And that's when she found it, the first real connection to the director. In the depths of a Swiss bank's encrypted archives, Sarah stumbled upon a file with the name Horizon Group. The file contained details of multiple shell companies, fake identities, and anonymous transactions, all leading back to a single point: the Collins family's mysterious financier. The financier's name was Mark Dunsmore. He was a billionaire investor who had made his fortune through tech startups and international ventures. To the public, he was a philanthropist, known for funding numerous charitable projects. But Sarah discovered that Dunsmore's donations were a cover-up. Beneath the surface, he had connections to arms dealers, hackers, and high-ranking officials in several corrupt governments. He was, in every sense, a puppet master. But how was Dunsmore linked to the Collins family? Sarah could hardly believe the connection she was finding. It appeared that Dunsmore had been deeply involved in the financial dealings of the Collins family for decades. What she discovered next would change the course of the investigation forever. The next breakthrough came when Sarah got her hands on a confidential recording. It was a conversation between Mark Dunsmore and one of the Collins family members, a name that had never appeared in the public eye before: Eleanor Collins, the family's matriarch. Eleanor had been the one to manage the family's wealth, and it turned out that she had known about Dunsmore's connections all along. The recording was chilling. In it, Eleanor and Dunsmore discussed plans to secure their financial futures by using the Collins family's fortune to fund a private network of corrupt officials and criminals. The robbery at the bank had been part of a larger plot, one that involved laundering money through legitimate businesses, funding arms deals, and even manipulating elections in key countries. But as Sarah listened further, a new twist emerged. Eleanor revealed that the family had never been in control of their wealth. Dunsmore had been pulling the strings from the very beginning, using the Collins family as a front for his operations. Eleanor had been complicit in this conspiracy from the start, and the robbery was her way of tying up loose ends. But as the recording continued, Eleanor hinted at a darker plan, a plan that involved orchestrating even bigger heists, targeting global financial institutions. Suddenly, the robbery didn't seem so random anymore. It was part of a carefully constructed operation to cover up even darker secrets. Dunsmore wasn't just a businessman. He was the mastermind behind a web of crime that spanned the globe, and the Collins family had been at the heart of it all. As Sarah began to piece together the puzzle, she realized she was no longer just investigating a bank robbery. She was uncovering a vast conspiracy that stretched across multiple continents, involving organized crime, international politicians, and business elites. Each new discovery led to a more dangerous game, one where Sarah's own life was now at risk. The deeper Sarah dug, the more dangerous her investigation became. Anonymous threats started arriving at her office, cryptic notes warning her to stop digging. But Sarah refused to back down. She knew that the key to unlocking the entire network was the director, and she was closer than ever to unmasking them. But just when Sarah thought she was close to uncovering the truth, disaster struck. One of her key informants, a former associate of Dunsmore, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The police ruled it as a suicide, but Sarah knew better. She was being watched, and whoever was behind the director would stop at nothing to protect their empire. With danger closing in, Sarah decided to confront Mark Dunsmore directly. She arranged a meeting under the guise of casual interview, but she had one goal in mind: to get to the director once and for all. In a tense, high-stakes conversation, Sarah finally cornered Dunsmore. But the meeting didn't go as planned. Dunsmore was calm, almost eerily so. He knew she was coming. He had been watching her for months, and now, it seemed, she was the one in danger. Dunsmore revealed the most shocking detail of all. The mastermind behind it all was someone Sarah never expected. The true identity of the director was not just a person, but a system, a shadow organization that had infiltrated every level of society. Mark Dunsmore was merely a pawn in the game, just like the Collins family had been. And then, in a final, chilling moment, Dunsmore leaned in and whispered, "The director is watching you. You'll never escape this." And just like that, the investigation took a darker turn. Detective Sarah Mitchell felt the weight of the world pressing down on her as she stood in front of Mark Dunsmore, the man whose influence spanned across continents. The investigation had led her here, into a quiet, nondescript office overlooking the city skyline. But in the calmness of the room, there was nothing but tension. For months, she had followed the trail, uncovering hidden networks, anonymous transactions, and dark secrets buried in offshore accounts. Dunsmore had been one of the key players, but Sarah knew he wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn in a much larger game, a game that had manipulated not just the Collins family, but the very fabric of power and wealth across borders. She was closing in on the truth, but the final piece had remained just out of reach. "Sarah, I've been waiting for you," Dunsmore said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of something darker. "I've seen the way you work. Smart, relentless, but you're too late." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to back down now. "You think this is over?" she asked, her voice steady. "I know you're just a piece of the puzzle. Who's the one behind it all? Who's the director?" Dunsmore smiled faintly. "You don't understand, do you? The director isn't a person. It's a system, a framework, an entity that has been in control for decades. The real power lies in the people who never show their faces." The revelation hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She had suspected it, but hearing it from Dunsmore's lips made it all too real. The web she had uncovered was not just about one mastermind. It was about an entire system of corruption that had been operating in the shadows for far too long. "You're telling me that the entire operation is just a front for something much bigger?" Sarah asked, barely able to comprehend the enormity of what Dunsmore was implying. He nodded. "Exactly. And the Collins family? They were never meant to be the key players. They were just a way to launder money, hide assets, and create the illusion of legitimacy. The real players are far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. The director, it's not a single person. It's an entire network of individuals who manipulate everything, from global markets to politics. And no one knows who they are." Just as Sarah was about to press further, the door to the office opened, and a familiar figure stepped in. It was Eleanor Collins, the matriarch of the family, the very person who had been at the center of this entire web of deceit. But she wasn't the same woman Sarah had seen in the media. The woman before her was cold, calculating, and somehow in control. "You're too late, Sarah," Eleanor said, her tone almost mocking. "Everything you've uncovered, every clue you've chased, was meant to lead you here. We wanted you to find the truth. But now that you're here, you're out of options." Sarah's heart raced. She had thought Eleanor was merely a pawn, someone complicit in the crimes but not truly involved in the larger plan. But now it was clear that Eleanor was far more than just an accessory. She had been playing a dangerous game from the start. "You?" Sarah asked, struggling to comprehend the gravity of the situation. "You were behind it all? The robbery? The money laundering? The conspiracy?" Eleanor nodded slowly. "Not just me, but yes, I was a part of it. And Mark here, he's just one of our many players. We've been operating for years, using people like you to further our reach. The Collins family has always been a tool, a means to an end. And now, we control everything." Sarah took a deep breath, her mind racing to process everything. The director wasn't just one person. It was a secret organization that had its fingers in every part of global power. But now, she had the ultimate weapon, the truth. She was ready to expose them. "I don't care who you are, or how many players you have in your system," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I'm taking you down." But Eleanor simply laughed. "You think you could stop us? You think you're the first person to try?" Before Sarah could respond, the sound of sirens blared outside the window. The police had arrived, but just as quickly as they had come, they disappeared into the night, leaving Sarah and the two criminals alone in the room. It was as if someone had orchestrated the police's arrival, only to pull the strings once again. Eleanor turned to Dunsmore. "You've done your part. Get her out of here. I'll take care of the rest." Dunsmore hesitated for a moment before walking towards Sarah, but instead of attacking or trying to escape, he simply stopped and looked her in the eye. "You can't win, Sarah. The system is too powerful, and soon, you'll realize that you've been part of it all along." Before Sarah could react, Dunsmore vanished into the shadows, leaving Eleanor and Sarah standing in the silence. The truth was out, but the battle wasn't over. The director's influence stretched too far for just one person to stop. As the weeks passed, Sarah fought tirelessly to bring the conspiracy into the light. She worked with government officials, journalists, and whistleblowers to expose the truth. But every time she thought she had made progress, she was met with obstacles. The director was everywhere, hidden in plain sight, untouchable. In the final moments of the investigation, Sarah uncovered the ultimate truth. The director was not a single person, but a collection of elite figures, business tycoons, government officials, and members of the media, who controlled the fate of nations without ever revealing their faces. They were the puppet masters behind the global financial systems, influencing decisions from the shadows. But Sarah wasn't ready to give up. She knew that while the director may be an invisible force, their power could be exposed piece by piece. The world may never know the full extent of the conspiracy, but one thing was certain: Sarah Mitchell would continue the fight. Sarah's mind raced as she stood in the empty room, the echo of Eleanor's words hanging in the air. She had uncovered the truth about the network behind the heist. She had fought to piece together the puzzle, but Eleanor's cryptic final statement left her with a chilling realization. The director wasn't just a conspiracy. It was the heart of an entire global system. The fight wasn't just about one robbery. It was about exposing the hidden powers that controlled the world from behind closed doors. Determined to stop them once and for all, Sarah poured everything she had into the final phase of the investigation. She knew the risks, but she also understood the stakes. The director's power was vast, and their reach extended into every corner of society. They had created a network so ingrained that every attempt to expose them had been thwarted. But Sarah was different. She was relentless. She reached out to everyone she knew, reporters, whistleblowers, and even those on the inside of government agencies. She couldn't trust just anyone, but she had learned to spot the cracks in the system. She worked tirelessly, following leads, connecting dots, and tracing the operations that spanned from the underworld to the highest offices of power. She had one goal: to bring down the director and every corrupt individual connected to their network. Weeks passed, and the pressure intensified. Sarah's every move was being watched. Her emails were intercepted. Her phone calls were tapped. It felt like she was walking a tightrope, but she couldn't stop. Every time she got closer, the director's agents made another move to silence her. But Sarah was no longer afraid. One evening, after an exhausting day of research, Sarah received a call from an anonymous source. "You're close," the voice said, "but if you want to know the truth, you have to meet me in person. Tonight." Sarah knew it was a trap, but it was a risk she had to take. She arranged to meet the informant at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. When she arrived, she found the place eerily quiet. Darkened windows, empty alleys, and the faint hum of distant traffic. But Sarah wasn't alone. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, Mark Dunsmore. His expression was cold, but there was a strange sense of urgency in his eyes. "You're still alive, detective," he said, his voice betraying a hint of respect. "But you need to understand something. The director is beyond us all." Sarah stepped closer, trying to maintain control of the situation. "What do you mean? You think you can keep hiding? You think I'll stop now?" Dunsmore looked at her, his gaze steady. "I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to give you one last piece of the puzzle. But once you know the truth, there's no going back. You'll be exposed. You'll be in danger. The director doesn't let anyone walk away once they know what they've uncovered." Sarah's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "Tell me what you know. Now." He hesitated, then finally spoke. The director was never about control over money or power. It was about controlling the flow of information. The director's members are not just criminals. They are the hidden rulers of society. They control the narrative, the media, the information people consume. They are the puppet masters who pull the strings of public opinion, steering entire nations in their desired direction. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're telling me the director controls the media? The public?" "That's right," Dunsmore said. "The heists, the corruption, the money laundering, they were all a distraction. The real operation was about manipulating everything from behind the scenes. Elections, wars, economies, all influenced by the director's hidden agenda." As Dunsmore spoke, Sarah realized the enormity of the situation. The director's true power wasn't in the wealth they accumulated or the politicians they bribed. It was in their ability to control the flow of information. They had created a false reality, molding society's perception of truth. But then, just as Sarah began to piece together the final puzzle, Dunsmore turned and began to walk away. "I've done my part," he said, without looking back. "The rest is up to you." Sarah watched him disappear into the shadows, knowing that this was her moment. She had uncovered the ultimate truth. The director was not just a criminal network. It was a network that controlled reality itself. And now, with the power of the truth in her hands, she could finally expose them all. But as she turned to leave the warehouse, she realized that her fight had only just begun. As Sarah walked back into the world she knew, she made a decision. She wouldn't just bring down the director. She would expose the system they had created, the lies they had woven into society, the way they had manipulated everything, from politics to personal lives. With the information she had gathered, she reached out to global media outlets, tech giants, and influencers. She prepared her final report, one that would shake the foundations of everything people thought they knew about the world. The truth would finally be exposed. But there were risks. The director would come after her. She had no illusions about that. On the eve of her big reveal, Sarah sat alone in her office, staring at the screen. She knew that once she hit send, the world would change forever. The director had controlled society for too long, but now, it was time for the truth to be laid bare. She clicked the button. The report went viral within hours. Whistleblowers, journalists, and activists from all corners of the globe joined the movement. The director's power was shattered, and their network began to crumble. It wasn't an easy victory. There were losses, betrayals, and sacrifices along the way. But in the end, the truth prevailed. Sarah Mitchell had exposed the hidden system of control. She had torn down the veil of secrecy that the director had built over decades. Though the battle was won, the war for freedom and transparency would continue. The world would never be the same. This is the end of one story, but the beginning of many others. There are still more hidden networks to uncover, more systems of control to expose. Will you stand with us and help bring the truth to light? Subscribe now, and stay tuned for more investigations that will change the way you see the world.